Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Scheavosky McGawion, who's the founder of McGawion Insurance Pros, and we'll be talking about the emotional needs and concerns in financial planning. Scheavosky, welcome back to the program.
Mike, good to be on again, sir. Thank you.
Hey, I think it's really interesting that you want to talk about this topic because I think that when we hear the phrase financial planning, we know it relates to retirement. And most of the time people just think, what's my rate of return? How much money am I going to get, every year from my investments? But it goes so much deeper than that because the emotional needs, how is this impacting your family? Why do you need this? What is your risk tolerance? All of that. So let's kind of start the conversation. Where do you start when you are talking with your clients to address these emotional needs and concerns when you're setting up their retirement plan?
Yeah, again, Mike, thanks for having me on again. I think when we initially sit down with a client, we are looking to see what their what is, or what their why is rather, in terms of the product that they're seeking and wanting to move monies, whichever direction, whether if it's at 401k or 403b or 457, that they've had. And, obviously at this point, when we talk financial planning, they're reaching a segment of their life where they're looking at the horizon and they're ready to retire. But, that big what if what if it's out there. And that what if question is, what happens if I don't have enough money to retire? I want to retire. Do I have enough what does my retirement picture look like? And I think when we sit down with them, the very, very important questions we ask is, what do you need, to sustain your current lifestyle? And then obviously, how much do you think you need? What do you need to ensure that you have the bases covered? And then how much, do you think you have right now to suffice for that? And then what we do is we come and, try to fill those gaps in with different products, in the insurance world, utilizing fixed index annuities and or permanent life insurance.
It's interesting you brought that up because I think a lot of times people assume, oh, well, I need X amount of money for retirement. And, we won't get into the weeds of, how many years should you plan for retirement, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, because that's a moving scale. Nobody knows that. But the thing that I want to check with you on is how do you approach guiding your clients to make the decision of how much you literally will need to be prepared for? Because I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I'm not going to need as much money as I need right now. But in reality, if you're not going to work 9 to 5, you've got more time to travel, do crafts, start a ministry, start a charity, start a, new business. And all of a sudden now, if you start taking them through a checklist, they might discover they need a lot more than they initially thought.
And that's what you want to do, Mike. You want to take your client through that checklist of things that they may not be looking at, the different landmines that are out there, i.e. taxes. They may be thinking, hey, I got this, sum of money in my 401k, I got the pension and I got my social security, I'm good. And then they forget about old Uncle Sam there, right? So, and then, where is, Mr. and Mrs. Client going to retire? They're going to retire in a state where they don't tax social security and pensions, or are they going to stay in a state that does? What's that rate look like?
Mm-hmm.
So there's several factors that we need to, ensure that client slows down and understands that we are looking at a holistic approach. And when we develop our plan, it's going to have everything that we could possibly consider so they can take those trips, and travel and go visit the grandkids or whatever it is that they set their mind on to do in their retirement years.
Yeah, that's a big point because it's like you're discovering the gap. Like here's what your income that we know will be from these certain sources. Here's what you said you need to have. And what if there's a gap? Now, there might not be a gap that you might have planned wonderfully and you're going to have plenty of money. But if there's a gap, how are we going to close that gap? And, kind of getting back to what we're talking about on the topic of this conversation, emotional needs. Well, you might have just stirred up a hornet's nest of emotional distress if now there's this gap and it's like, I don't have enough money to retire. So when you're able to smooth that over, boy, that just gives that peace of mind, right?
Right. I mean, America faced a very dark time, right? Back in 2008, and we don't have to go into all the specifics, but just from a high level, we know most retirement accounts lost from 39 to 42% in a matter of months throughout that year. And so if you were already approaching retirement through that time, if you were, again, approaching retirement in your 60s or what have you, and you were like, yeah, I'm out the door, and then 2008 happened to you, well, let's just call it half. Whatever you had in your retirement account, you lost literally half of it. And oh, by the way, you still had to pay taxes on that if you decided to still move forward. So, I mean, just a lose-lose situation, right? So a lot of times when we deal with our clients, we want to make sure that obviously they don't put all their eggs in one basket, but we want to make sure the basket is diversified enough to where, hey, what's your risk tolerance here? If you're heavy on the conservative side, then okay, we can maneuver and transform there. If you're kind of in the middle, well, we have products where we can do that. We're never going to tell a client that 401ks are bad or anything like that, because we want to make sure that obviously they are spread correctly and they have the different safety nets. And that's key, the different safety nets so that they can absorb some of that risk and ensure that they, have monies that they can't lose on. And when people hear that, Mike, if I may for a minute, when people hear, oh, I can't lose. No, you can't. With permanent insurance planning, as well as fixed index annuities, they all have a guaranteed floor, as we call it, of zero. So what does that mean? I mean, obviously, money is not, number one, invested directly in the market, but two, it mirrors the market. And if the market starts acting crazy, i.e., 2008, well, you didn't make any money, but guess what? You didn't lose any money either.
Yeah. That's a big point that I want to bring up, that a lot of times people, when you talk about emotional, stability or the emotional needs in financial planning, when they open up that portfolio statement every quarter or whatever time frame, or they look at the news, their heart sinks when they see drops in the market, because with the market, if that's where their money tends to be, there's ups and downs and all around, and that's got to be really distressing. But when you can give the gift of giving them some types of plans where it's, outside of those volatile swings, that's a huge gift.
Yeah. The windows of opportunity surround, in my mind, Mike, and I often always lead with this is the educational piece. If we can make sure that, the client understands what it is that's going to cover these gaps for them, i.e., life insurance, maybe term insurance, because there's a strategy for it, or IULs or fixed index annuities. If our clientele understand that, hey, you got a gap here, here's how we can solve it, then I think it puts some of that emotional distress, at least lowers it, because again, if your money is directly in the market, that's going to fluctuate up and down. Yeah, you're going to ride. But then, when we put these permanent products in place, well, guess what? I'm getting a statement on an annual basis. I'm not having to watch the NASDAQ or the S&P every single day, like I was once before. Maybe I still do that with some of my other accounts, but at least I know
a small
this chunk
percentage.
of money. Yeah, man. But this chunk of money here, I know that it's safe, it's sound, I cannot lose, and it's going to meet my intention based on the goals that I've set.
Yeah, that's a really, really big point. So let's kind of just put icing on the cake and the cherry on top when we talk about that guarantee. When you've got that guaranteed income with accounts that can't lose money and the peace of mind it brings, you probably have had clients that have said, hey, listen, I am tired of getting all of those statements where it's like loss, loss, loss. And then you probably have clients that after you put them into this kind of approach, their friends come to them going, oh my word, how much did you lose? And they say nothing.
Right, right. And even as an added approach, right? We deal with consumers who are maybe on the verge of retirement, within a 5-year window, right? And we meet with them and we offer the consultation. And it renders that, hey, okay, you got 5 years, you want to retire. In your 401k, you're still going to have to pay tax, right?
Yeah.
So why not? Let's start to Roth convert some of that and still ensure that monies are growing. I mean, right now, a couple of products that come to mind, they're offering premium bonuses just for people to roll over, and they will assist in creating accounts and pay the IRS the taxes on money. So you mean to tell me not only can you ensure the protection of my principal, you can help me solve my tax problem before I get to retirement? I mean, that's a win-win. That's the definition of a professional in my
Yeah.
mind, Mike.
Well, and I would say this too, that yes, you're exactly right. But when it can impact and mitigate lower taxes in retirement, but also when you set it up the right way, it helps mitigate the taxes when you pass it on to your heirs and your family for that legacy. And that's a gift that keeps on giving, as they say.
Absolutely. Hey, bottom line, Mike, consumers wanna know that, they're dealing with somebody who's got their best interest at heart. Obviously, the SEC, since the whole Bernie Madoff incident years ago, has made it to where, people out here need to understand suitability, right? And
Yeah.
so telling a client that, hey, first I got to make sure this suits you, right? Because it may sound wonderful, it may sound like the best thing on earth, but if it doesn't suit you, federal regulatories aren't going to allow us to do it. So, imagine that agent that's, hyping up this particular product and then come to find out it's not suitable. They can't even, the client doesn't pass suitability. So we have to ensure that we guard against that by educating, because at the end of the day, mothers don't want to leave their, children or grandchildren to struggle, due to an untimely passing or a tax bomb that they left for them. They want to make sure that when they move on or transition, that hey, they can leave knowing that they've done the right thing. And that kind of gets into a little bit of what we do in the term of estate planning as well to calm those emotions.
Yeah. 100%. So what are some things that people should be questions that they should be asking themselves when planning for that financial future to make sure that they, kind of have all of that aspect taken in place for peace of mind and make sure that they don't outlive their money?
Well, Mike, the number one question I would look at it's what do you think your tax bill is going to be, in retirement?
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, you're still going to have that tax bill, and so understanding what tax bracket one would be in retirement is the number one question, because you want to keep all that money you've worked 40 quarters, to get, and if you understand the tax, I think behind it, then you can really understand how far your money can go. And then, how much time do I have before I really am going to pull the plug and, venture off into the sunset and retirement. Time is a key factor as well there, Mike, because we don't know how much time we have here, right? So, and trying to time it, we want to make sure that we can enjoy those monies again that we've worked so diligently to build up. And we made it past the 2008 massacre, but and avoid having all of our eggs in one basket, for whatever future fiasco may happen.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that is so important because I think a lot of times people really don't take, like you just mentioned there, those taxes in mind, or they don't look at all of the, aspects that could impact them. And when they start discovering like, oops, I should have taken this into consideration, that amps up then their emotional distress. And again, that's what we're talking about here is addressing emotional needs and concerns. Well, isn't it true that when you have addressed and you've got kind of like this holistic plan and that you can check all the boxes, your retirement is moving in the right direction. You've got, peace of mind. You've got some of those guarantees. Now, all of a sudden that really lessens the emotional distress that clients would have. And when you can guide them in that, that's a gift from you. But, also just making sure that you're choosing a financial professional that's going to be addressing all of that. I think that's just a huge need.
Huge need. I mean, parents want their children's college experience to be just that, like a college experience. They don't want to worry about the student loan debt. So, we have products, in the permanent insurance space that can assist with that, to make sure that once they graduate, they don't have to worry about it. I mean, newlyweds want to ensure that the mortgage will be taken care of if a spouse passes prematurely,
Yeah.
so we, one of the things we pride ourselves on is not leading with product. All right. We don't, the product will be identified within the process, sure enough. But as long as we're leading with education first and then the client being able to at least regurgitate to his or her neighbor, hey, this is what I did. And you mentioned something earlier, hey, my account just took a 25% loss. What about yours? No,
Yeah.
no loss, So when you put forth the effort that we do, again, some of my core values, service before self. This is a service. When you put that educational piece first, right then and there that client, if you walk away from the table and nothing happens, you walk away knowing that you've imparted knowledge that client can take to the bank.
And, I'll just kind of make one last observation when we know that the kind of need that arises when insurance is involved. Now, I know you work with a lot of clients with retirement plans and all that, but if there is a death in the family and they are, not thinking straight and they call you, all of a sudden when you step in and say, I've got it, we put this plan into place. Here's the next steps. Boy, that sure alleviates a lot of that emotional distress as well, right? That support that you can give.
Right, because in the annuity space, if it was an income product and they haven't exhausted, all of the monies that was being annuitized to them, well, then there's a beneficiary who's going to receive that, and then the question, hey, what? Well, yes, this is yours, but maybe it wasn't a product where the client elected to Roth convert, right? So hey, here's the tax code. Here's the tax guidelines that you have to be aware of receiving this money. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so many nuances to this insurance industry that it really takes, a professional to dissect. Again, when clients, like you say, pass away, we're right there. We're right there to help instruct. Like you said, we put a plan in place, and a lot of the times, the beneficiary already knows what the plan is, but yet they still rely on us to echo it back to them, because they're not thinking about taxes and all this. They're thinking about the loved one who just passed.
Well,
what I mean?
isn't it similar to when you're in business and your company says, hey, we're going to be changing the process and we're going to train you on this new computer software, and they train you on it and then it doesn't roll out for 3-4 months. Well, you forgot half of it. So you need to have someone to go back to and go, hey, how is this working? Well, the same with what you're discussing here. When you set up specific types of financial or insurance products, that's fine and good. They understood it. But then when a minute passes and they need to, act upon that, they need that reliable source like yourself to help guide them through the process.
A lot of times, beneficiaries may find themselves with a matter. Hopefully, at that point, we position ourselves in that particular consumer's family as the professionals of choice, that they just pick up the phone. Hey, I'm grieving, but I need your assistance here. What was that? Who I need to call about this or that, and we pride ourselves on being there. You've heard me say before that, this business is definitely a ministry. It's not
Yeah.
not for amateurs in any shape, form, or fashion.
I love it. Well, Scheavosky, thank you so much for giving us your insights and how you're serving your clients. If someone is interested in learning more and reaching out and connecting with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, Mike, as always, consumers can go to my website, myinsuranceprofessional.com, all one word, myinsuranceprofessional.com. Go there. You can request an evaluation or a policy review, whatever it is. We do our very, very best to try to get back to you within 24 hours.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Thank you again, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.